As you know, that this paper is co-authored by Mukti and me, and Mukti being the sort of what should I say, organized person that she has got a whole paper ready. My contribution to it will be some anecdotes that I will tell you, because that is the sort of person I am. Also because these anecdotes in some way charter my journey through this university as a teacher. As I've said, I'm a thoroughbred product of this university. I have all my degrees from here. I have made my career here. I started teaching here. And in some ways, the story of what has happened in English studies over the last 30 or 40 decades since I've been teaching is also the story of my life. So I'll tell it to you. I'll begin with a small anecdote. I started teaching in 1971. And the English syllabus for the, when we started, this college had only BA, what was then called BA Pass, which is now called BA program, and now it is, of course, the BA program, as you know, is quite dead. It was then called BA Pass, and the syllabus in those days, I was asked to teach Shakespeare's Julius Caesar to the third year class. And of course, I taught them the way I had been taught English, which is that you teach in English, you talk in English. My whole idea was that this was the only class in which the students got to listen to English, so I must talk to them in English. After 2 months of wavering through that book, one of my students gets up and asks me, "Madam, Brutish aadmi hai ki aurat hai?" You can imagine how shattered I was. But I also realized that my methods were not working. This whole, hard work, sincerity, commitment that I had brought to the class, and not only me, my students also. I must say that this was a hard-working class. My students were sincere. They would attend each one of my classes even if they understood nothing. But they were there, and it was not working. So we needed to look somewhere else. I needed to do something else. And at that time, we had only, the CFL had just about come in, and I looked towards it to see whether I could learn something there. I remember, going back to the department, because that was the time when the syllabus was made by the department. The professors in the department, they decided what we would teach at the college level, even though, as we complained, they had no notion of what college teaching was like. They had passed, stopped college teaching years before, but they were the ones who made the syllabus. So I went to one of them and I told Professor Bridgeraj Singh that this is what had happened in my class. And he turned around and he said to me, "How can we give an undergraduate degree to a student who has not heard of Shakespeare?" And my retort was, "Well then, sir, my students have heard of Shakespeare, but that is all they have done. They have no English." So if I was going to teach them English, then I had to do something more than that. And as I said, I went down to CFL, what was then at that time Central Institute of English and Foreign Languages. I did one small course there. I came back from there not particularly enlightened. Let me admit that I didn't do the regular full-time course, whatever small bit I had done, but I was not particularly enlightened. I came back from there saying the instead of the, and were instead of were, and stuff like that, which confused my students even more, I think. So I came back to my original style. The next thing that I want to tell you about is that a few years down the line, the syllabus had changed a little bit, and I was given to teach the Lord of the Flies to one of these classes. And nothing much had changed on the ground. We were still, as I said, the syllabus change consisted of substituting one text for another, one author for another, one novel for another. So we were left teaching Lord of the Flies. Lord of the Flies is not really very different from Othello as far as these, or Julius Caesar as far as these teachers are concerned. As you know, the Lord of the Flies is a novel about a handful of British boys marooned on an island and how they learned to survive, the sort of power struggle that takes between a place and the veneer of civilization which wears off so quickly once we are out of the controls of our society. But in this class, I remember that when we came to the death of Piggy, me and my class wept copiously together. We cried through the death of Simon, and as I said, nothing much had changed, but lo and behold, in this class, 10% of my students got a first class. Everybody had passed. What had happened? Nothing really had changed. This brought back my faith into literature, and I said that maybe we shouldn't discard it completely. It still works in its mysterious ways. But we were still trying for change. And I remember a group of us who were doing MPhil at that time, we decided that we would, draft a small petition and take it to the department and say that we wanted a say in the sort of syllabus that was imposed about undergraduate students. I was at that time doing my MPhil and with Professor, and I was taking a paper with him, and in every class, there would be a conversation like this. I would say something and he would say to me, yes, that was a very good point. What's your name? After I had signed this petition, never asked me what's your name. I was seen as one of the troublemakers, and of course this petition was ignored. But a few years down the line, when Manashri Lal became the head of the department, and remember that she has come from outside, she has come from Rajasthan. She, was it a seminar, Khanasa, that she arranged? For the first time, Delhi University held something on ELT. Delhi University has a post amongst its professors for an ELT professor, for somebody in language teaching, which had been lying vacant for years. They never found anybody suitable to appoint, except in the last 4 or 5 years.
But that is also language.
Language.
Yeah.
It's still ELT. Haribabu is still ELT. They still haven't found anybody suitable to appoint her. So she arranged for a seminar, and for the first time, when you remember Professor Desai, who was here yesterday, and I introduced some of my students to him by saying that this is one of my teachers, and he for the first time talked about ELT, we whooped with joy. Here is somebody from the department who actually recognizes what is ELT. And we then decided to work towards some sort of a change and see that we could have different types of textbooks in the class. And that is how, developing language skills, 1, 2, etc., these things came about. Of course, many of us were more enthusiastic than informed. We didn't have, as Mukti will document in the paper, none of us had any degrees in ELT or whatever, but the enthusiasm was there, we tried to create something. And of course, the communicative theories, as you know, held sway at that time, where it was more important to communicate than to be fluent or to be correct. And under the influence of all those books, we produced a textbook. That textbook taught me a lot. There were people who swore by developing language skills, and there are people who swear by it even today. And there were people who swore at it. It was a textbook that required the teacher to not, you couldn't go into class and simply say, open your book on page so and so, and I will read. And look, mind you, I'm talking about teachers, I'm not talking about teachers who don't go into the classroom, they're not my concern. I'm talking about teachers who are hardworking, sincere, wanting to teach. And after you have explained every word and every line and every paragraph, and you still have the sense that students haven't understood, well, many of us could still come away from a class like that feeling very satisfied and said, I have done my work. If the students don't understand, it's their concern. What developing language skills was trying to tell you was that it is your concern. You have to do something about it. And then stop explaining every line, stop explaining every paragraph. Let the student learn. Let the student grapple with the meaning. Let the student come to terms with it, whatever they understood. This is how I had learned English. I studied my first Shakespeare play. I read my first Shakespeare play when I was barely 12 or 13. I didn't understand much. I'm sure most of it passed over my head. But that is how we learned English. Except that was a different age, a different time. There was, I was not a first generation learner like many of my students were. They did not have the facilities that existed when I was studying. B, we didn't have the internet, the radio, the TV, the films, whatever. I was not allowed to go to see films. So willy-nilly we read. And by the time I came to college, I must have devoured practically all of Dickens and all of Hardy and God knows what not. So even though I didn't understand too much of it, at least I had picked up the language. Today's students don't have that sort of time or that sort of space. And we have to do something about that. And this is what the book was trying to do. But from those who swore at the book, again, as I said, I learned something. The first thing I learned was that the Delhi University teacher will not engage with a book which does not have literature in it. That was the first lesson I learned. Second lesson I learned was that literature could be harnessed. We could use it to our own purposes. And that is why when I came to writing fluency, I saw to it that we had stories and poems and essays and things like that in the book which would interest both the student and the teacher.